Oh, my ears.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Spilling the Spirituality. I am Hilary, and I'm with my pal Rev Rob. Say hi,
Hello.
Rob.
Hello.
Oh, hey, so interesting. Rob's got his nails done. Well, that's really cool because we're going to talk about today. What we're talking about is getting out of your comfort zone and the benefits of getting out of your comfort zone and how it makes you way more aware and conscious and present to the moment and awkward. And tell us about those pretty red nails, Rob.
So, thank you for asking. And I, when we were talking about topics, I thought comfort zone was an interesting one because we've talked about it offline a lot. But when you saw the nails and asked about them, it really kind of solidified that this is a great example because, you know, I was at the beach this weekend with some friends and we were playing around and did our nails together. And I've always wanted to do them. And, why wouldn't I? But doing them, having them done like in the safety of a beach condo in Myrtle Beach, which is a pretty straight conservative, South Carolina is pretty conservative. And I was so thrilled to have them done because I love having them done. But I also was feeling very self conscious about them. And so there was this exhilaration of uh, just getting them done because I really haven't done them and like gone out before. And then came like as we were leaving, we were going to drive home, and I found their decals. I started to take them off. I did take them off. I took all of them off. By the way, just an advertisement for the decals. They last for anything, shower, do whatever. But so driving before we drove home, I took them off because I became concerned that having blue, it matched my sweatshirt, blue painted nails would make me vulnerable to whatever attack or ridicule or whatever. And I found myself I was very uncomfortable with the with my lack of, I think, courage or drive or impetus to stay out of my comfort zone that having the nails in the beginning had. So, I took them off and I felt safer, but I felt that the true um, understanding or the true growth can only happen if you kind of stick with what is feels right for you, and it did feel right for me. So we came home, and I'm back in my house. I feel a little safer, and so we our my friends that I stayed with are staying with us, and we kind of redid another round. And it has really, and I went out today for the first time and did what I do, but it really was this exhilaration of feeling like I had the courage to do something I wouldn't normally do, or that I've always wanted to do but didn't have the kind of guts to do. um, and seeing how it, especially when you asked about them, seeing how this little act was, it took me out of the routine of my life, and it took me out of a place where I felt safe, perhaps thinking kind of uh, the same thoughts or the same issues or the same, kind of life disappointments or whatever that we think about every day, the same voices, the same, program we're playing in our head. It took
Right.
me out of it. And uh, even more that you mentioned it just a few minutes ago, I feel like that's that's what I'm talking about. Like that's the kind of thing that when we say do something that scares us, you've heard that you don't have to, it doesn't have to be big. It can be a small swing that has significant impact, not necessarily on the world around us, but certainly how we feel about ourselves in the world. And so I want to thank you because you really actually, I was talking about something kind of in the macro way, and you really drilled it down to something that in the last couple of days I feel very intrigued by. So,
Yeah, it's so cool that you did this. And of course, now you're even more out of your comfort zone because now we're recording this and people will see it and could possibly have judgment, right? And that,
Right.
and in this situation, I want to ask you is, was the feeling of being out of your comfort zone because you were one about how other people saw you, or was
Yes.
it more you? Like if you didn't have to worry about other people, would you feel like it wouldn't be out of your comfort zone?
Again, a great question. I would say that it is the latter, which is concerned about what other people think.
Yeah.
And uh, just this question is kind of helping me navigate in my head the difference between doing something that I feel right about or that I've always wanted to do or try, but fear, as we learn, fear in our lives has always played a big part in perhaps keeping me from doing things outside my comfort zone. And a lot of my comfort zones have to do with how I will be perceived or how I will feel being vulnerable, being perceived as anything, as being a gay person or being effeminate or
Right.
whatever. But there's a vulnerability involved that in this case I think has more to do with what other people are thinking about me than.
Yes. Right. And we'll discuss the latter later. The latter later. Yeah, because okay, so for me, I have my nose pierced. Wait, it's this way. And I did this very late in life. I mean, not more than 5 years ago, and I'm 54. And also, I went gray during 2020, during COVID, when I couldn't get my hair colored. And I think, and constantly people would say, What? Gray. Like, do you want to look older? And it's like, you have to deal with the questions and the judgment. I think people do that because probably deep down inside they wish they could be as free. But what I wanted to say about, you know, expression, self-expression. I mean, I also like, did the thing here, and I think I have a piercing right here and some tattoos and things like that. And I did all these things in my 50s, which is kind of funny. But
That's very cool.
like
Since
you,
I've known you.
yeah, you want to, the need to self-express is so great that it trumps what other people think. Like you feel like such freedom. Of course, even now with the gray hair, I still, because I get so many ma'ams now, and I do feel like people are a little bit kinder to me because I think they think I'm like a granny, but I'm not. But at the same time, when I'm not thinking about other people, I feel so free. I don't have to spend any time in a salon anymore. I used to, since I'm this gray, I used to have to sit in the salon like every, 4 weeks, if I could even go that long. And the fact that I don't have to do it anymore, the fact that I put this nose piercing in my nose just because I can. It's like it's this beautiful freedom once you put aside the judgments of other people. So it's so worth it, isn't it?
Yes, I do think so. And I just love this idea of now kind of reviewing times that I've chosen to go out of my comfort zone and figuring out whether that's about me or whether it's about other people. Or I mean, obviously it's both in the end, but what's the motivator? So I first was out of my comfort zone having painted nails, which I've always desired, but I just never did for whatever reason. But then having them was felt exhilarating because I had painted nails. That's out of my comfort zone. But then having to kind of squeeze back into that box to take them off before I drove back just made me feel this kind of way. And
Yeah.
could I sit with how worth it is it to express oneself out of the comfort zone if it's going to make us feel vulnerable in any way. And I think your hair is another great example. Like, I know how important your hair is to you and how that was a decision that you were making that was not, I mean, it, it's an external one, but it's one that is a serious one as we age and have to figure out how we want to present ourselves as, elders in some way. And I'm curious, and I kind of throw this back at you. So I, it feels like it might have been the same kind of process. Like, yes, it feels freeing, but then there's the response like, oh, but you had such a nice, nice hair color when you have to hear that kind of thing all the time.
Or
But
your
yet stick
kid
with,
says, or your kid says, Mom, are you gonna have gray hair when I get married? I'm like, yeah.
and so have you found that you like it better? Like, can you look at yourself now and say, ah, okay, this is a different side of me. I'm getting used to me, or are is your comfort zone still activated or whatever because
Yeah.
you're still trying to work through this gray hair thing after a couple years?
Yeah. Of everything I've ever done, and I've done a lot of strange things and worn a lot of strange clothes over the years, this is the hardest because this is has a stereotype surrounded that anyone who has gray hair is old. And I don't feel old and I don't act old and I'm super fun. And then sometimes when I think like if I'm dancing at a party or something, I'm like, do I look like the granny that's dancing at the party? It's like, so I would say to answer your question, it goes in waves. Like there are times when I'm like, girl, you are rocking this, And then there are times when I get up in the morning and I look in the mirror and I'm like, holy shit, you still have gray hair, because for so many years, I mean, I've been coloring my hair since I was in my 20s because I prematurely went gray. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely an up and down thing. Certain things like the nose piercing, I've gotten used to, the tattoos, I've gotten used to. I don't really notice them anymore. But the hairs, I mean, that's what people see as soon as they see you. But I wouldn't do it any differently. And if I happen to think when I meet a lot of like cool kind of hippie gray haired ladies, I'm always like, God, how badass is that? Like, to me, it's cool.
Right,
And there's a piece of me that wants to help be one of the pioneers to sort of pave the way for other women to feel like they can go gray and at a younger age and not have to be, 70 or whatever when they do it.
right.
So, but
And like if you have long hair, it's a commitment. So you actually are growing it out and then having to decide once it's done, you know what haircut works for your face, but it's the same, it's the same, only different. And how does that work? And how do you um, kind of see it in the mirror and keep that fierceness, that sage fierceness going that we have, going at our age. So
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same hand, so now let's switch gears and talk about like getting out of our comfort zone, which would less affect other people and the judgment of that, and more just like the fear of doing something differently. Like you had mentioned early on in this video, you said something, you were like, how uncomfortable yet exhilarating it was, and how you're used to being a certain way in this world. Same, like I think a lot of us, we kind of have a boring existence, right? You're doing the same thing day in day out. Like even just changing things a little bit can feel uncomfortable. For instance, I take this like 4 mile route every day through the park. I have to walk my dog, and normally, I go the same route, but God, it's so boring. So, I mean, I've been doing it for as long as I've had dog. I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 some years. So it's doing it. So I've been forcing myself to go different directions or not even walk on the path, to like walk through the green and, whatever. And it just feels different and better. Like even when it's stuff like that, even when it's like even changing your day around, where like, because I have this thing, I meditate in the morning, then I exercise, then I eat lunch, like all those things. Like when you even change the order of things,
mhm.
it sort of awakens you a little, don't you think?
It absolutely does. And I do, and again, I think it's fun to talk about these kind of physical examples, hair and changing our day, because they serve as these of kind of analogies or ways that we can apply that to something that is deeper. So, if we can, first of all, if we feel stuck somewhere, like we feel stuck in our lives in general, making a little shift in our day is a way to get unstuck. Like you just do something different out of that routine, which you're saying that, you do. And I think that's a powerful but very simple way of doing. We often talk about that moment where you got to do something different in that moment. Like all of the things, all the topics we've talked about, the way to meet the challenges that our topics are bringing to us, grief and death and loss and issues with abundance and health, that still requires us all to try something that we didn't do before, because what we were doing wasn't working. That's why we're listening to this podcast or watching the video. It's why we're doing that. We want something to change. We resist the change, but one little thing can open up a whole new way of being. You take a new corner on a street and you get inspired by something else that you didn't see or you wouldn't have seen had you not taken that
Yeah.
turn or new space.
And I,
So it's yeah, just a little way of unsticking ourselves is such an
yeah.
exhilarating and forward moving thing.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is it creates presence, Like I think a lot of the things we do during the day, we kind of dial it in. I know how to exercise. I do it the same way every single time. I know how to meditate. I know, all of those things. So what happens when we do something like you do a different kind of like I just started getting into this new exercise called gyrokinesics. And it's like
Ooh,
interesting. And it's not even worth explaining. Look it up. But anyway, it's just, the idea of, okay, I have to learn something new, like completely new. And
right.
of course, I also think, the older we get in life, the more sort of stuck in our ways, because when I think about when I was younger, I was certainly much more adventurous. So, I'm always, I know me, I get bored if I don't change things up, then I'm not enjoying my life so much. So I'd like to share my most uncomfortable thing that I've done, and maybe perhaps you can share yours.
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure there's some stuff we wouldn't want to share, but here's something that I would share. Um, I went to another country. I went to Colombia to do ayahuasca with people I didn't know. I guess it was almost 2 weeks. I took the risk of, first of all, I didn't even tell my parents I was doing it. Until I came back or something. But dealing with people feeling afraid of me to go and going to a country like Colombia, which everyone says is so dangerous, which I didn't find at all. But all of that, like I remember leading up to that trip every day, like for a month before, I was so nervous. I had a hard time like eating, sleeping, my stomach was unsettled and everything. But those were like two of the best weeks that I've ever had. It was so interesting, the experience of it. We also did sweat lodges every morning and, had to live communally. You know, it was really incredible. It's something that even my 22-year-old son thinks is the coolest thing. He's like, Mom, I can't believe you did that. And I also did this, I don't know, maybe 5 years, probably 5 years ago. I don't think I was quite 50 yet. So yeah. Anyway,
Right after we first, it was very soon after we first met. So I just thought it was just the most cool and adventurous thing to do.
yeah.
And yeah, I've always
At the
been
at
so
the
respectful of
time,
that.
thank you. And at the time, I could think logically of all the reasons why I shouldn't do something like this. But just like your nails and my hair, I had this desire. It was like the desire was greater than the fear. So I just pushed through the fear. And I'm so glad I did. Right? Like, Do you have an example where you like went out of your comfort zone big time?
Yeah, I think there's several. And I've always been, I've always relied on choosing myself to get to do something that's very much out of my comfort zone is a challenge here. My dogs are going to bark. But I've always had people, friends that have said, come on, do it. We're gonna, you don't have a choice. You're going to do this with me, or we're going to do this together. I think that's always been very helpful. So I had two major uh, athletic events that I did. But one was in a long time ago, in 1996. I moved to DC, and I work for an LGBTQ organization, and was going to host its first AIDS ride. It was 300 miles from Philadelphia back to Washington D.C.
Wow.
And when I saw the kind of the package that was announcing this, and it was all to benefit AIDS service organizations. So when I saw the ads for this, it's very moving. It's very inspiring. They know what they're doing when they market it. But I even knowing that I had this desire to do it, like, oh, I want to do that. I want to like take myself to this limit and see if I can do it. I still required a good friend of mine to go, oh, we are so doing this. And because of that, like it all started. You lock in the time, and then you have to build what you need to do to have the capacity, if you're not a cyclist, which I wasn't, to ride 300 miles in 3 days. And it was probably the first time that I had taken such a big leap to do something that I wasn't sure I would be able to finish. Basically, it's like you're making that choice, but you're also then getting a plan that can help maximize the success, which the training plan and training with groups and all the things we had to do. So that was very much something that feeling of knowing I could do something that perhaps I wanted to do but didn't have the guts to do until I was encouraged by somebody else. That was just such a wonderful feeling. And then similarly, like I was old, I was in my 40s when another organization I worked for, which was also an AIDS organization, hosted its first fundraising marathon team. And so that meant that, we would work with this organization, a set of coaches, to do long distance running. I'd run short distances my whole life, but I'd always had a bucket list of doing a marathon. Never thought it was possible, but because my organization did it, I was the communications director. I could be a first person, reporter on this whole experience. I did it, and it really, every time you're getting out of that comfort zone, the first time you run, and the more that you're increasing your time, doing things that you never did before, it is a spiritual exhilaration. It's this um, you're doing things that affirm to you that you can pretty much do what you put your mind to. Like it's cliche and it sometimes, but when you put your mind to something and it has an outcome that is what you planned on it being, it's just like, wow, I can do this.
Yeah.
And I can do anything. Like that would be, if I were preaching, what I would use as an example to say, well, this is what we want to go back to. We know we can run the marathon, which means we can run any of life's marathons. We can
Right.
do what we need to do, and with just the right presence.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be anything like enormous. Like those were incredible. I mean, that's incredible experiences. And the ayahuasca thing is like pretty massive, right? Not many people are going to run to a different country to do that. But, even things like, here's an example, so in my park, there's woods right next to my park. And for years, I used to think like, I really want to be in the woods. I'd rather be in the woods, but I'm a woman and I shouldn't walk by myself and I shouldn't go in the woods. And it reminded me of the Broadway show Into the Woods, like you got to go into the woods, into
Yes.
the woods. So I would walk parallel to it, on my path. like I did
Right.
every single day. And one day I just couldn't take it anymore. And I decided to go into the woods. And oh my gosh, like so what a better experience. But even that, like every time I go in now, which now I don't have that fear that I'm going to get mugged or whatever. And plus I have my
Right.
dog with me, but, the freedom and the feeling of being alive and, you just are so, I mean, it's really in the situation of getting out of your comfort zone when we're talking about things that we're not worried about how other people are seeing us. That's a different thing, but we're more concerned about it's the fear. We're like afraid. So it's facing that fear. And the fear could even be like, have you ever had like anxiety about going to a social event, right? And you force yourself to go. And the whole time, like I notice sometimes when I get anxiety about going to a social event, I'll be in a bad mood and I'll kind of take it out on my husband or whatever. But really, what's really going on is I'm feeling anxiety about going to this event, and then I'm always glad that I went, when it's over. But it's
Right.
like, even that can be getting out of your comfort zone, right? So it doesn't have to be like a big leap, you know?
Right. But when you do them, though, they just show you that you can A, choose something that might not be as comfortable for you, and then B, just kind of nail it and rock it. And I love that. And I think that I think that also means that we have to learn to tell the difference between what is calling to us to pull us out of the comfort zone. Like being reckless is not the answer. Like, okay, so someone says, let's go skydiving, or let's go bungee jumping, or let's, whatever, race cars, or let's, you know, go shoplift a bunch of things. I mean, whatever the challenge is going to be. I think learning then to see what resonates with you. So usually if someone asks me to do something that I know I'm afraid of, for instance, but that I don't think I would ever do on my own, that's usually a little signal to me that it's something I need to think about. Like I'm afraid of heights, and I do not think that I'm going to actively say, oh, for my blank birthday, I want to go skydiving. However, I do feel like if the universe has put in my way an opportunity that either someone asks me and says, I'd really love to do this with you, or it would come in such a way that I would know this was the comfort zone thing that I'm supposed to like deal with. Like, and so learning what my boundaries are and going, oh, that's not for me, or listening to the offer or the idea and going, that is for me. I've just been too afraid to try it, or I've just, you know, I feel like there is this thing that you can tell in yourself when the opportunity is to get out of it. Like if you're being forced, or if your immediate reaction is no way, like that's not something I don't want to feel unsafe, or I don't want to feel, but there's then the time that someone could ask you, or it, you know, a whole crew of your best friends are going to skydive. I'm gonna go with them. I'm gonna go with them because I can't not. And I think that's where you can choose and do yourself some real good. Like I don't like to do things I'm not good at. So if someone asks me to do something that I can say I don't like it, but it's mostly because I don't know how to do it. Like I don't play pool, but if I go with a bunch of people and they're playing pool at a pool table, like, am I going to do it? Am I going to make myself feel or look stupid by doing it, or be with people that know how to do it? Like, but you know, if your friends you have nothing to lose by playing a game of pool and looking like an idiot. Nothing to lose. You have everything to gain by actually learning how to do something and perhaps being inspired to do more of it.
Yeah.
So
I think
but
that,
it's a fine line.
yeah. And I think, you bring up a good point, which is that a lot of times we don't do things because we don't want to not be good at something, which is a really good point. And I'm sure the audience could definitely relate to that. And it reminds me, I don't know if I ever told you this. When I turned 40, I decided I wanted to learn how to play the guitar. And so my husband got me a guitar. joined a group lesson with basically a bunch of 13, 14, 15-year olds and me. And as we took beginner guitar, and I remember like how awkward I felt, and oh, it was so uncomfortable because like these kids like wouldn't listen to the teacher, and I found myself becoming a mom and being like, "You guys be quiet," that kind of thing, and just feeling. I'm also a lefty, so I had to learn everything he was teaching us. I had to do opposite because I was a lefty. And I remember that might have been the most uncomfortable I've ever felt, really out of my
Yeah,
comfort
that's
zone. But I do remember, when I learned how to play Let It Be by the Beatles, I felt like such a badass, and yeah, it is. I think that's a big one for a lot of people is like, well, I don't want to try this because I'll probably suck at it. And I sucked at guitar, and I mean, truth be told, I really never got good at it. And then I gave it to my son who made it into a righty guitar. But at least I tried,
yes, of course. Doesn't
like
that feel good to have tried it? And
totally. And same thing with bike riding. I didn't know how to bike ride my whole life. And again, when I hit my 40s, I wanted to learn and I tried, and my kids saw me fall. And I mean, I'm still a nervous wreck. We bike rode over the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and I was having a heart attack as I did it, and everybody's passing me and yelling at me. But I did it. But it is, especially also when you have kids and they're so much better at it, at these things than you are, and you're way older, like there's that too. So, yeah, a life without taking risk and stepping out is just so boring, Otherwise, you have no good stories to tell, right?
right, because the stories all come from those times that we've been awkward or had egg on our face or we're trying something that took us a while to accomplish or to learn about. I mean, even if it is in pursuit of something that is becoming a master of something, it's like, don't you want the stories of when I first started out, I didn't know anything and now I'm a virtuoso at whatever I do, writing or playing something, or I just it's because I don't do it a lot myself, and I love when I consider it a sign when someone says, "Hey, do you want to do blank?" and it's something that I'm like, "Oh, that tightening." I really can, it's very present in the moment to discern what is it, that something I don't want to do because I'm afraid, or is it something I don't want to do because I don't want to do it? Because if I'm afraid, I have no choice but to get over it. It's like
Right.
putting on those big boy pants and knowing that I got to do this if I'm going to grow. If I'm going to be a mature person in the world, or if I'm going to be a good friend, then I've got to be able to be honest with my friends or be
Right.
authentic or do what my friends want to do, even if I don't want to do it once in a while, or my husband or my kids. I mean, certainly
Right.
having kids would mean that they're going to come to you with a whole bunch of stuff that you never even thought about in your childhood,
Oh, yeah.
and you're going to have to go, okay, well,
Caregiving. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. And you don't want to be the wuss, sledding down big hills,
right,
things like that. But I really feel like, and we got to kind of wind up now, but I really feel like God put us on this earth or source or whatever to experience joy. Like we're here, we have so many things we can try and do, and most of the time, we all stay in our little boxes. And I think that's oftentimes why there's a lot of, sadness on the planet. Um, I think everything is here for our enjoyment to try it. And I mean, don't you kind of think that that's the purpose of life?
yeah, discovering something, learning something, and then um, growing with that thing is just, there's nothing like it. And really, I as we end this conversation, I'm thinking, well, what can I do today to like get me that little rush of doing something that I wouldn't have done, which doesn't have to be big. And
No,
again, it's a
it doesn't.
spiritual growth.
in the last few minutes, let's think of like little things that people could do. Because even like for me, what comes to mind is, change the order in which you do things. Or if you're one of those people like, oh, I always exercise this way and I have to do this and I have to burn so many calories. What would happen if you didn't keep track of your calories and you didn't keep, and you completely just went with what your body felt like doing that day? Or eat breakfast for dinner,
Right, yeah,
like,
exactly, exactly. It can be small. Take a different route. Um, Wear something you wouldn't normally wear.
yeah,
Uh, I think that's so important, and then take that with you. Like take that experience of, oh, I had a very traumatic experience water skiing when I was a kid, and so like, but I I kept at it. It was frustrating. I didn't want people yelling at me to tell me what to do. But like, once you get up, you got up. Like, what can you do today that you don't have to be a master of, but you can just say you tried.
yeah. Because ultimately, all of this, when we do things like this, it makes us so present, which is the goal, so present, so alive. So it kind of gets us out of that brain fog that I think a lot of us carry day to day. So I guess I would just say to our listeners, our viewers, do something different. Do something out of your comfort zone. What's the worst that can happen?
And then pat yourself on the back when you do, because you deserve it. Because
Yeah. Like those nails. Show those nails again.
baby, they're even red.
Woo! Yeah. All right. Well, tell us what you guys do different. What do you do out of your comfort zone? Would love to hear it. And I guess we'll see you next time with
See you
another
next time.
uncomfortable topic.